Hi, I'm Najee, and I'm here to talk about books. Today we are here to talk about the books I read in August. This is my August wrap-up. We're going to be talking about some physical books, some books from the Kindle, some books from the library, and some audiobooks today. First, let's talk stats. Let me put this down. Okay, I'm going to be putting a graphic up on the screen, but let's just talk it out first. This month I read 19 books. I read 2,663 pages. I listened to 127.98 hours, and my average rating on the books I read this month were 3.77. The average book length was 369 pages. The average time it took me to finish a book was 5 days. Out of all the books I read, about 11 were fantasy, 11 were romance, 6 of them were contemporary romances, 2 of them were sports romances, and 2 of them were young adult. It was 100% fiction. 58% was audio, 32% was digital, and 11% was print. Now that that stats are out of the way, let's talk about the books. I'm gonna go through them in the order that I read them. So starting at the beginning of the month, I read through Fortunate Misfortune by Miah Osha, which I rated 3.75 to 4 stars. I loved this book. I read it as an arc, but I finished it right as it came out. But this is about a perfectionist girl who's going through things in her life because she has diabetes, and she just got into this really tough relationship that she was in for like a year, and it's academic rivals to lovers, and it's so good. I 100% recommend you should read it, and the FMC is black. So love that for me, and that's honestly why I picked it up. And then I listened to Dead CatTail Assassins by Deji. I also had the arc for this and a physical copy, but I still listened to it, and it only took a day to listen to since it's really short. So it's very short, and I rated it at 3.75 to 4 stars. Again, this was so good. The main character is black, and I think most of the characters in the book are black, and it takes place in a southern kind of, well, it doesn't really take place in America or in the world as we know it because it's a fantasy story. And the dead CatTail assassins are dead, but they don't have cattails, and they really have nothing to do with cats. That's just their name. But they're dead, and they serve this queen, and she uses them to kill people. They're assassins. And I don't know, it has a really interesting lore. It was really short and to the point, but it also tackled some really good and heavy themes, and I really loved it. And somebody, I think in the reviews or something like that, talked about how black this book is, and it really is. And if you don't know what I mean like that, I just mean it has a lot of black southern mannerisms and understandings. And in the book, it's written in I imagine sort of Jamaican. Well, I was listening to it, so to me it sounded like Jamaican Caribbean type of black accents, and I loved it. That was the second book I read this month. And then I got into a sequel to a book, the sequel to Ghostsmith by Nikki Preto, Ghostsmith. This was also an arc that I ended up finishing the day it came out. I'm not going to talk too much about this one since it's a continuation of a series, but I really, really liked this one. I rated it at 3.25. And this is a continuation of the first book. And in the first book, we're in a dystopian fantasy world where people can souls are bound by their bones. And so you have to burn the bones and release people's souls and bodies. And that's the job of our main character, Rin. And she gets into this plot to assassinate a prince, and she becomes friends with the prince and friends with a different prince. There's multiple princes, but it's got enemies to lovers in it as well, and it's got a lot of secret and intrigue, and I really like this. This month, one of my goals was to really get into fantasy, since I've always been more an urban fantasy Percy Jackson type girl, so I really wanted to get into more fantasy in general, and I definitely accomplished that. And then I had a DNF. I DNF'd The Magical Meet-Cute by Jean Metzler. I'm not going to give much of an opinion on it because I didn't get that far in on it, but I don't think it was for me. I had an arc of this in both the audio form and a digital form, and I just don't think it was for me. Next, I reread Legendborn, which I'm now realizing I did not grab my copy of, so let me go grab my copy. Okay. I've got Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. Legendborn is literally one of my favorite fantasies, my favorite urban fantasy, one of my favorite books ever. The world is just magnificent. It's an Arthurian retelling. So if you like to love Ghostsmith's retelling in The Bright Sword, I think you'll probably really like this one. And I just love this book so much. This was a reread. I reread it since it was August, you know, fall vibes, even though it's freaking 100 degrees outside. But I reread it, and I listened to the audiobook as well as reading it like this. And it was just as good, just as masterful as the first day I read it. The first time I read it, I rated it 5 stars again. And I can't wait for the 3rd book in the saga, Oathbound, to come out. It comes out in March of 2025, I believe. But yeah, Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. And then I read Love Not Qualified by Meave Hazel. Again, this was another arc that I ended up finishing like the day before it came out, or the day it came out. It's a office romance, boss assistant. I met you on the internet, but I don't know it's you. And the main character is like black or POC. To me, she was black, but she could just be POC. And I really liked this one. I gave it a 3.25. And I would recommend this one if you're into any of the tropes I mentioned before, but also if you're into like plot twists and things just keep happening and it keeps you on your feet and it keeps you on your toes. But I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. This was not this author's debut, but it was a part of a series, a bigger series. So maybe I would have maybe I would have gotten more out of it had I read the previous book in the series, but I really like that one. That's Qualified by Meave Hazel. Next, I started reading the urban fantasy series, what is it called? Mooncalled by Patricia Briggs. And it's like, if you don't know what it is, it's an old urban fantasy series, even though it still continues today. It started in like 2006. And it's basically a were-coyote living among a bunch of werewolves, vampires, and it's all that, except it takes place in the modern world. I think it takes place in Wyoming, I want to say, in one of the Midwest places that takes place there. I listened to Mooncalled, which is the first book, and then Bloodbound, which is the second book. I gave Mooncalled a 4-star and Bloodbound a 3.75 star. In Mooncalled, you just meet Mercy Thompson, who's a mechanic, and she works in a residential area where there are werewolves, and then we learned that she was raised by a werewolf pack and everything that entails because she is a coyote and not a werewolf. And what was really interesting about this series to me was that the main character herself is Native American, and since she is Native American, the author Patricia includes like Native American lore into why she's a were-coyote, and she's seen as a walker, like a skinwalker, even though she points out multiple times that she's not from the tribe, that skinwalkers typically are considered a part of the culture. So I really think it's a good deep dive into Native American culture as you understood it in 2005. And like, as you continue reading the series, you can see the more enlightened and politically correct things come about. And one of the main characters is gay, one of them is black, like multiple characters are very diverse. The characters are very diverse, even though it was written in 2005 and is an urban fantasy where like people are werewolves and change shapes and things like that. And I think some people mentioned in this wrap up and just in general can take notes. Like, it doesn't take much to be diverse and create diverse characters. So yeah, Bloodbound is about the vampires in the world, and I rated that at 3.75. And then I listened to and tandem read SJM, Crescent City. I only listened to the first book of ACOTAR, and I have zero like interest in really getting into Throne of Glass or anything like that. I only read this because it's urban fantasy, and I got a free copy of this, as well as using Libby, which if you don't know what Libby is a library app where you can basically rent out the books your library has access to. So I rented out the audiobook, the graphic audiobook, and I listened to that. It took me like a few days, and I also tandem read it with this. And I didn't rate it actually because I don't want to kind of feed into the Sarah J Maas like platform, but I liked it. That's really all you need to know. It wasn't nearly as diverse as the Mercy Thompson series, which is something that keeps me connected to a series, and it's super long, but there were parts that I really enjoyed. I like Hunt and who's the other guy? And Bryce. I like their romance. I like their fan art. and that's about it. And I also listened to the first part of the second book, but I didn't listen to the second part yet because the graphic audio is not out. And at this point, it's been so long that I probably won't. But yeah, if you're interested in reading Sarah J. Maas, please do it through means that are like secondhand, or listen to the audiobook, just because she is a problematic author. And I would say that, to me, these books aren't always worth like spending full price on, and also funding Sarah J. Maas. Like I said, after that, I listened to, on Libby again, I listened to the second book, House of Sky and Breath. And I liked the first part. I don't really know about the whole book because I haven't finished the whole book. Then I went back to the Mercy Thompson series, and in the same place I got that free copy, I got a free copy of Iron Kissed, which is the third book in the series by Patricia Briggs, Mercy Thompson series. This, I'm trying not to put like the glare of the light in my glasses. This book is so good. I rated it a 5 stars. It's my highest rated out of the whole series. I love it. I 1000% recommend it. It deals with really heavy topics and heavy themes, but it does them perfectly. It does them greatly. And she's a really terrific writer, and I think this is the perfect showcase of this, and this is a perfect showcase of how paranormal romances and urban fantasies are like worthy of telling hard-hitting stories. And it's just like really good. I love this one. If you're gonna pick up the series, at least read to this one. But trigger warning. There is a trigger warning at the beginning of the book, I'm pretty sure. But I have like a pretty old copy. Oh, there's a map. I didn't realize there was a map. And this has to, I hope I did this right. This has to do with the Fae. This book specifically has to do with the Fae. I think in each book they take on a different like paranormal, supernatural being. And in this one it's the Fae. This was my favorite one by far. I rated it 5 stars. And then I listened to the next one, which is Bone Crossed, and I rated it 3.75. In Bone Crossed, you do more with the Fae. I'm pretty sure. I don't really remember, but I'm pretty sure you do more with the Fae. And it's just the next installment of the series. And then I read on my Kindle, Homebound by Meredith Trapp is the second in the Boundless Players series. I rated it a 3.75 star. It was so good. The yearning, the tension, the forced proximity between these people was out of your mind crazy. We have childhood friends to lovers, single dad, hockey romance, cowgirl romance in the South in Texas. Yeah, I lived for this. The tension, I can't even like describe how good it was. It like felt like a slow burn, even though it was only 375 pages. It felt like a slow burn. The tension was everything. I believed in their love story. I believed in their past. I loved the little baby, and I lived for the single dad trope. So that was really enjoyable. And I also read that as an arc, so I highly recommend you guys go and read it too. And then I got back to Abby Jimenez, because if you didn't know, well, nobody knows because I never actually said this on the internet, but my first Abby Jimenez I just read like 2 months ago, and it was just for the summer. I realized that it's like an interconnected standalone to like the rest of her stuff, but that's the first one I read, and so I decided to pick up Yours Truly, which is actually the book that came before Just for the Summer. I had a physical copy of this, but I listened to it in tandem with reading it. And with Yours Truly, I liked it. I gave it a 3.25. Yeah, I gave it a 3.25, but I did not like it nearly as much as I liked Just for the Summer. And this brings me to a point. I think with Abby Jimenez, you're either a Just for the Summer girl or you're a Yours Truly girl. The same way I think for Emily Henry, you're like a Happy Place girl, or you're like a freaking a freaking People We Meet on Vacation girl. Like, there's these writers like Abby Jimenez and Emily Henry have two different niches that they can write in, and girlies fall into 2 different ones. I am a Just for the Summer girly. This one does it for a lot of people. It didn't exactly do it for me, but I thought it was cute, and I love some of the tropes that happen in here. So that is what I gave it 3.25. Next, I got into a spin-off series of the Mercy Thompson series, which is called Alpha and Omega series. I love werewolves. I need paranormal romance to make a comeback right now. I live, breathe, and freaking die for paranormal romances, specifically werewolf romances, and so I had to read this one. the Alpha and Omega series. The first book is called Cry Wolf. I rated it 3.25, and I read it on my Kindle. And I didn't read it through Libby. I got it off a different app. And I rated it 3.25, and it is 2 characters from the Mercy Thompson series in a spinoff. One is Charles, who is kind of like a brother to Mercy Thompson, and he's a werewolf. And then the other one is Anna, who is Omega. And in this series, Omegas are different from what you typically see Omegas be in, like, the Omegaverse. I wouldn't say this is an Omegaverse book at all, because Omegas are not the same level as they are in other series. But I give that one a 3.25. And then I listened to Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam-Young. I gave it a 3 stars. And let me say something. I love the unexpected pregnancy trope. I love the pregnancy trope. I love single parent. I love this kid is not forcing them together, but the thing that keeps bringing them back to each other. I love that. And I think the same thing I say for, like, Emily Henry and Javi Jimenez. I think you're either an out on a limb girl, or you're a Ready or Not by Cara Bastone girl. Let me get my copy of that. Okay. I have found that either people like Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonam-Young, which it was good. I will admit I liked it. Like, I'm not saying it's not a good book. I feel like it's not how I like the pregnancy trope to be done, for the most part. Or they like Ready or Not by Cara Bastone, which also has the pregnancy trope, but the FMC is not, the MMC is not the baby daddy, is not her baby daddy. But I loved this one. I loved everything about it. It was so wholesome. It was so beautiful. I love Shep, who's the main boy, who's the MMC in the book, and I loved the pregnancy trope in this book. So I think you're either an Out on a Limb girl or you're a Ready or Not girl, and I'm a Ready or Not girl, and it's really that simple. However, I am going to be picking up more Hannah Bonam-Young because I feel like we have a future together, and I feel like we have a connection. I just haven't delved into enough to, like, have it with her yet, you know? Next I read another book in the Mercy Thompson series. I read Silverborn, which is about I think the Fae again. This is the 5th book in the series. It's about the Fae again and something that happens in, like, the craziest book, so I won't get into it, but I rated it a 3 stars. And it was still pretty good. Or 3.25. And then I read Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. And I read this book because Lila Sage came to the bookstore where I worked at for Romance Book Day, and I met her. I'll put, like, a picture of us here. And she was so lovely. She's so pretty. I love her cowboy boots. I think it was her sister with her, and I lived for them. They were great. And the passion she talked about these books with, I just had to get into it. For this one, I rated it a 3.5. It was really good. I really liked it. I loved, like, how short it is, and it did feel like kind of a slow burn, like Lana Ferguson says on the front. It was slow burn adjacent, and I think it was really sweet. I can't wait to read Lost and Lassoed, which is Gus, who is the main character, Clementine's brother. He's like a grump. I can't wait to read his and her best friend's romance, Lost and Lassoed. I have an arc for that, so I can't wait to get into that. But first I have to read Swift and Saddled, which is about Ada and Wes is Emmy or Clementine's brother, middle brother. And Ada is like a city girl, and she comes to the city, and they fall in love. And I can't wait to read that one, too, because Lila Sage, when she was talking about writing, she talked about how much she loved Ada and how much she connected to Ada, and I could really tell that she loved that character. So I'm glad that I read this, and I can't wait to get into the next one, and Lost and Lassoed, and Wild and Wrangled, even though I don't know who that's going to be about yet. Lastly, we have 2 more. We've got... Oh, I don't have a physical copy. I got the arc for I Got Abducted by an Alien and Now I'm Trapped in a Rom-Com by Kimberly Lemming, the writer of the Media Mishap series. And I freaking loved it. I love that she moved from fantasy to sci-fi. I love that she's created another world and dropped so much lore in like 235 pages. I lived for this book. Okay? Aliens, forced proximity, mates with an S. Let's say that. Mates with an S. And it's the beginning to a whole new series. And basically this girl, Dory, that's what I remember, because her name's Dorothy. And then she goes with a lion whose name is Toto. Yeah, I remember that now. So Dorothy gets abducted by aliens, as the title suggests, and she ends up in like a mating situation with aliens. And she's on the planet, there's like dinosaurs, and it's really crazy. And I don't know how Kimberly does it. I don't know how she thought about it. Steamboat Willie is mentioned, so if you think that's funny, Steamboat Willie mentioned. And I just thought it was so good. I loved the writing, I loved the pace. Very smutty. Warning, very smutty, but I lived for it, and I love Kimberly so much. Kimberly, if you see this, I love you so much, and thank you to Berkeley for this arc. I'm gonna go publish my review on it ASAP, actually, because I need to do that. And lastly, we have the book that I'm currently reading, which is another arc, Blood of the Old Kings by Sung Il Kim, and it's translated by Anton Her. And so far, I just got into it. It's got necromancy. Okay, let me just read the back. There is no escaping the empire. Even in death you will serve. In an empire run on necromancy, dead sorcerers are the lifeblood. Their corpses are wrapped in chains and drained of magic to feed the unquenchable hunger of the imperial quest. So far, we are following our main character. She's a woman. She's like 30-something, and her family was killed by the Empire, and she goes to this dragon who has 7 eyes and gives up her eye in like a deal, saying that she will become king and help him fulfill his promise to the old king. That's how we are so far. And another goal of mine this year is to get into more translated fiction, so I'm glad that this is a translated book, even if it is fantasy and not exactly literary fiction, which is what I'm trying to get into. But it is translated fiction, and I'm super excited to get more into it. I'm hoping to finish it within the next few days to end off the month with those. The month ends on Saturday, so I'm hoping I can finish it. It's about 358 pages, so there's a good chance that I can, and get my review off before it comes out. This book comes out October. This book comes out October 2024. I think that's all of the arcs I talked about that aren't already out. But yeah, I will put up some. Oh, if you liked my graphics for what I put up here today, I got the graphics from Storygraph, because I use Storygraph to track all of my information and things like that, like all of my book progress and like updates. So if you liked those graphics, they are automated graphics off of Storygraph. You can generate them after you input your information, and you can import your Goodreads to your Storygraph. To the people that are telling you it's hard or things like that, it's literally not. They're probably just not doing it right, honestly. It's really easy. So yeah, I think if you're using Goodreads, Storygraph is better, and you get those really cool graphics that I hopefully put on the screen sometimes. But yeah, I am done, and this is where I'm saying goodbye. I will see you guys for the, what's the next one? September TBR. Until then, bye guys.
I think you can consciously make your own luck.